committee here as far as running the meeting. My name is Terrence Newshel. I'm a member of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, and we'll quickly go around the room and then go out to the audience.
Ron Sullivan with the board.
Pat Harney with the board.
Carol Hodgson, in Community. Jerry Allen, Community.
Jim McCarriger, local attorney.
Doug Russell, District Court Judge. Ron Berg, Legal Services. Andy Johnson, Assistant to the Board.
Nancy Tompkins, Auditor's Office.
Go ahead and go around.
David Boyle Entry.
Dan Mills, Taylor Road and Kitchell.
John Kane, Venture Architects.
Dwight Doberstein, Newman Munson Architects.
Brian Carlson, the Samuels Group.
Larry Wilson, Facility Subcommittee.
Mike Stripp.
Missed you.
Lynn Rowell.
Steve Valazar.
Solef.
Dottie Mock.
All right. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Alexi Gurtaway.
Excellent. All right. We'll go ahead and start rolling through this. We'll go ahead and let's talk a little bit about draft plan for the bond referendum, including a subcommittee, supervisor, committee member, and public input on the size and scope, cost of project, and timing and ballot language for the referendum. And I know that we're going to kind of let Jim McCarriger as well kind of step in a little bit on some of this issue, because this is a topic that was of prime interest for the Public Information and Outreach Subcommittee. And so maybe, I don't know, Jim, if you want to kind of lead in a little bit about what the subcommittee looked at, particularly in the area of ballot language and also the timing of the referendum, and then maybe some of the concerns we wrote down based on the public hearing that took place.
And then, just for explanation purposes, the document, and there's copies back there, this is the draft that the committee had before them last month, with the addition on the third page of the recommendation from the subcommittee regarding the language and the date.
Jim McCarriger, I guess the first item that we talked about was whether or not the issue should move forward, and if so, when it should move forward. And it was the consensus of the committee that they felt that it should move forward. And it felt that of the dates that were available, that the May 7th date was probably the most realistic date from the standpoint that if we wait for the summer, we'd have students would be out of town, and there would be some accusation that we didn't want to include them in the vote. If we wait until the next fall, then the cost, we were told the cost were going to increase by 3%. So we're talking about a cost increase of the building, so we didn't feel that was probably appropriate. So we probably felt that, given the fact that the public still has in mind the ideas of the Justice Center, that May 7th would be an appropriate time to move it forward. With regard to the bond language, we thought that the bond language would probably be similar to the language that we used before, since we had used Johnson out of Des Moines, and so I mean, if he felt that the prior language was okay, we didn't see any changes basically in the language except for the amount, of course. So we proposed that we use the same language that we used on the last referendum, only changing the amount to $43,500. It was felt to be important that we kept language in there that would connect the courthouse to the new structure. And we felt that it was clear enough that we were talking about a building that would incorporate the sheriff, jail, court operations in its entirety. And so we felt that was language to go forward with. So was the consensus of the committee that the language that's proposed in the material presented for the committee today, that be the recommendation of this committee to the board to be considered for their action.
And a little bit later in the meeting, we'll look at approving a recommendation. But I think, this would be a good time to talk a little bit about the public hearing and about some of the concerns that we heard from residents, and also some of the both negative and positive. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think from a standpoint of the meeting, we thought the meeting was a good meeting. It allowed both sides an opportunity to present their positions. It was felt by the committee that from the standpoint of the need, that it was clear from even those that were speaking on the other side, so to speak, that the need was well demonstrated, that there was a need for both security, safety, and space. The issues on the other side, I think one was there was some confusion with regard to what the Justice Center was and what it encompassed. I think we, as a committee, said we could maybe do a better job in telling the public that in fact it is a combination of the court facilities, the sheriff's office, the jail, into a combined facility which incorporated the old courthouse. And we felt, looking over some of the material we had, that seemed to be clear, but maybe it needed to be emphasized from that standpoint. We felt that we maybe needed to put a little more emphasis on the fact that it was a courthouse that we're dealing with, and that we're talking about the serious safety, security, and space issues in the courthouse. And then we looked at the design. We felt that maybe telling the public that this is a schematic design, it's not a final design, and maybe having a meeting in which we could invite the people in and talk about the design. Of course, understanding that when we're talking about the design, we've been able to now redesign the building a little bit, keep it within the cost structure we have. If we're going to be talking about other kinds of designs, we always want to keep in mind that we're still going to the public for a set amount of money, and it has to be fit into that amount of money. With regard to, we thought that there were some points raised with regard to the number of people who were being placed in jail, and I think the number was 17% of the students leaving the university with a criminal record. I think we do want to look into that and be able to talk to that issue. I think that at the same time, we're talking about agencies that are making these arrests that are beyond the scope probably of the board, but maybe with the board being able to have some discussion with the local law enforcement officials on that. Disproportionate majority, minority people involved in the justice system was discussed, and I think it was felt that we are working and trying to work closely with a committee that already exists with regard to that issue, and see if that issue can be explored to see if there's something at least that we can tell the public. We are all interested, and I think it was clear from that meeting that we all certainly have an interest in the issues that are raised, but some of them are beyond our scope of the immediate ability of us to correct them. But that doesn't mean that we can't tell people that we are looking into them and trying to answer some questions with regard to that location. So those were kind of the main issues, I think, that I recall. Karen said you might have others.
Yeah, I think that we focused primarily on a couple of areas that we heard from those residents and some of the action steps that we think that ought to be taken. For instance, we think that the facilities committee would be the facility subcommittee would be a good place to have Dwight and his team meet in a public meeting, particularly with Joni Kinsey and Don Otto. Those were two individuals who identified. Don Otto was the individual who said, hey, this isn't green enough, can we talk a little bit about green? And Joni Kinsey was a little more in the historical part from the University of Iowa. But if there would be a way for the facility subcommittee to get together and talk a little bit more about the design, if there's some areas in which we can rest assured that this is still a pre-schematic design, and then address some of their issues. And then we looked at the issue in regards to not only incarceration rates, but also the disproportionate minority contact, and bringing together folks like Dorothy and her team, and the Board of Supervisors, along with the county attorney, and potentially create a summit of some sort, again, before May to start addressing that issue. That seemed to be two that resonated particularly from the public hearing. Were there others that folks identified?
The other one, I think, I just want to comment, I think Jim said it was correct. I don't want to basically make excuses for anyone that's done violations, but I think we can work with law enforcement and try to change some of the arrests and so forth that they've made. But also, I think at a larger scale, I think we need to work with the court systems in some manner, and particularly particularly when someone is convicted of a minor offense, the expunging issue is a large issue as far as I'm concerned. The gentleman here, I think, said the same thing at that meeting, that you need to be truly expunged, that they don't float back up on top if someone had been arrested for some minor offense, and whether convicted, or maybe there needs to be some alternative method of paying their dues versus the depth of the court system that they use.
The problem with that, of course, is that again gets into an arena that we really don't control, a deferred judgment.
But it's working with the courts.
But the deferred judgment is a statutory provision, so we're guided by the state statutes with regard to so and I think they do work. The county attorney's office has set up systems like the diversion program and things of those natures to deal with minor offenses, and in that sense, the case is dismissed. So at least if there's a record that still existed, so it shows a dismissal. But unfortunately, Iowa at this point in time, that I'm not aware of, has no truly erasure statute. So until the legislature decides that they want to actually use the word expungement, as most people would think it out of the dictionary, as being erased.
But that could be something that comes out of this summit too. There was also some discussion, Jerry, you had mentioned, there are actions that residents can take to help in this process when it comes to incarceration, particularly in the area of volunteering. And there's some avenues there that I think that the community, there's a lot of energy out there in regards to incarceration rates, and maybe there's a chance for residents in the community to focus some of that energy into actually something really positive on that avenue. So that's another one that, again, bring into the fold of this discussion. Yeah, and remember, just go ahead and mention your name for the auditor's office, and we'll pick you up on the microphones up above.
Dwight Doberstein with Newman Munson Architects. I wanted to reiterate that, yes, this is very much in the pre-schematic design phase. And what you should note, there were some comments about energy efficiency at the public meeting. We'll be going through the Mid-American Energy New Commercial Construction Program. And in that program, they actually pay to have a model built of the whole facility, and then they use that model to test out different energy ideas. So if they for example, test out the amount of glass or how much shading we have, those two issues that were brought up, and find out that there's a more energy efficient way to do that, then we will make those changes. So we are open to having meetings yet with the public and discussing the design. But as far as being energy efficient, I think going through that program will assure that this is a very energy efficient building. So
it seems to me that there's actually one more that was brought up in the conversation that I know Sheriff Polkrovic has a lot of interest in, and that is the area of jail alternatives and the strategic planning that's taking place with that. I've had a chance to talk with Lonnie, and he's working very closely with Jessica Peckover in regards to creating a strategic plan and really identifying the area of jail alternatives, particularly if we have the space. These are the kind of programs that we would like to implement. And so, as we look at approving a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors in regards to the ballot language and the timing of this ballot, it seems to me that there are 3 action steps that need to be taking place as well, particularly before May, and that is the building design and the issues of greening, the disproportionate minority contact and issues of incarceration rates, and then jail alternatives and some of the strategic planning of that. Does that seem like a reasonable step? I mean, I think these are the kind of things that I know we heard from the public hearing. I think that we want to value the residents coming in and sharing with us their concerns about those things. And so I think that they deserve to have us kind of lead that effort.
Another thing I think would be helpful as far as presenting the plan to the public would be maybe Dwight or maybe John or both. I think a breakdown of what percent of space is dedicated towards the jail services, the jail, the court services, and sheriff department, so that people have a general idea of what the space is actually utilized for. Instead of just a smart building, here's what we are going to be providing. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of that space issue.
yeah, we can do that, plus assign costs for those areas if that's what you want.
Any other areas of we call action steps? That's something that our public information and outreach group, Jim's leadership can start to kind of put kind of the people in place and then maybe have a mechanism or a forum of sorts to bring the community in, like we did with the public hearing on those 3 particular areas.
There's gonna be a lot of, there'll be quite a bit of work to do to set these up, and we're gonna have to get to work on it right away, obviously, because this proposed date is not that far away.
The other thing that didn't come up
Dorothy.
Dorothy listening, so directly, but I think is an issue is why we, if really what we want to have is about 150 beds filled, why we have to have 109 beds. And I think we just need to keep reiterating that in order to house everybody, we have to have X number of extra beds because of the ways they have to be separated and stuff. So we need to put that in all our publicity.
Along those lines, this is Doug Russell speaking. Along those lines, one of the things that really was not emphasized in the public hearing is that although there's much talk about how many beds do we need now, what's an appropriate number politically, economically, and so forth, we have to remember this building is going to be there for 50 or 75 years. We're building it for the future as well. So regardless of what is shelled out and what's built now and so forth, we have to be thinking that way because they're not going to come back to the voters and say we need a 3rd jail 10 years from now or 15 or 5 or whatever. And the same with the court system. However many are shelled out, however many are reused, we have to think way far in the future. We've got a building now that's 111, 12 years old. This one is going to be 50 or 75 for sure. So we've got to keep that in mind and communicate that. And I know that people are concerned about the cost and the size of the building. But we have to remind people that the size is based on the needs that were the product of literally years of consulting and meetings. We built it this big because it needs to be that big. And people complain about the cost. I know the cost has been pared down a bit. I know the board has been very conscious of the cost. And I don't know how to emphasize how economical this is. I do think it compares favorably with the $53 million indoor practice football facility, for example. But I think for an important civic need like this, I think we need to emphasize that this is not just some number for some Taj Mahal. This is what it takes to get the job done.
I think that needs to be a part of that building design conversation. So does that seem like proper action steps, things that we learned from the public hearing? Your subcommittees are going to be pretty active, particularly alternatives and treatments will be focusing again on the disproportionate minority contact and on the incarceration rate, as well as some of the jail alternatives discussions. I think we're all kind of hands-on deck at this point when it comes to all 3 of these. And I think that what we learned from that public hearing is that there is an incredible amount of interest. The amount of people that showed up for a night meeting like that, I think, was really valuable. So appreciate all those folks doing that. With that said, we will then look at item 3, which is possible action approving a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, including but not limited to timing and ballot language regarding the Justice Center bond referendum, as Jim noted and as Andy Johnson noted as well. Page 3 has that information on your little packets here. This is a recommendation, again, from the Public Information and Outreach Subcommittee. And I do want to point out that we also had a resident who was a no vote, if you will, in regards to the bond this past November come and actually give her endorsement of this language as well. So I wanted to make that clear that it wasn't just all the folks that just happened to be sitting on the meeting that had been doing this for 12 years. The recommendation again reads as follows. Shall the County of Johnson, State of Iowa, issue its general obligation bonds in an amount not exceeding the amount of $43.5 million for the purpose of erecting and equipment a county justice center to solve current safety, security, and space needs of the sheriff, jail, and court operations in a structure to be located adjacent to and incorporating the existing historic courthouse. And again, this is language that was used exclusively in the November election, other than the price tag, of course, has gone down because of the adjustments we've made since November. With that being said, this is again is a recommendation from the Public Information and Outreach Subcommittee. It's been forwarded to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, and I think it would be appropriate to get a vote from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee in regards to this ballot language to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dorothy. Is there a second? Thank you, Jerry. It's been moved and seconded in regards to the ballot language. Is there further conversation?
Well, I wanted to mention to folks, the board typically takes up items over a 2-week period. We put things on an informal agenda for discussion and then a formal agenda the next week for an actual vote. We do have this issue on our informal agenda tomorrow. That's not really binding. If you folks want us to do something different, we can do something different. We don't have to take any action tomorrow, but just so you understand, it is there. Meaning if folks are in agreement, we could talk about it tomorrow at our meeting, and then assuming again, folks are in agreement, vote on it on February 14th. For what it's worth.
Any other discussion from members? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. We'll move on then to discussion in regards to the timing of the election. And again, the Subcommittee for Public Information and Outreach discussed this and agreed that May 7th, 2013 was an appropriate date to set a special election. Is there further conversation? Otherwise, I appreciate a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Jim, second by Dorothy. Further discussion?
Well, again, same process. The reason that I guess it's important if folks are in agreement is the auditor's office typically tries to allow for some early voting. And the sooner you can notify them of an actual date, they get ballots printed and then early voting can take place. So for the purposes of getting more people to participate, probably the sooner the better.
And I think that we'll likely want to, I know there's a document somewhere around that started to note some of the reasonings behind, and Jim, I know you noted some of those in regards to why it would be appropriate to do this election sooner rather than later. You talked a little bit about the fact that the costs go up, the design potentially could be impacted by that because of those costs. The numbers are fresh. The electorate had an opportunity to vote in November. The students are still in town. I think that we can probably create a bit of a list.
And it is on page 2. Yes.
Thank you. I knew it was around somewhere. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. That'll be recommended and forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. All right, we'll go through other reports, and I can see we're a bit light on some of these. Any report from alternatives and treatments?
Now, we've met 2 or 3 times, I think, Terry. What we're working on right now is kind of doing an inventory of all the activities in Johnson County that would impact people coming in contact with the criminal justice system, how they move through the jail, and how they're supported after they've been in jail. So that's an ongoing process, just doing an inventory of that. We'll also be looking at how the additional space in the jail will be used, so what would the classrooms be used, what sort of services could be provided in there. And then at our last meeting, we had about 20 questions presented to the committee, so we were researching the response to each of those questions. So those are the pieces that we're working on. We're headed towards that strategic plan.
Okay. Jim, anything further in public information and outreach? Gary, anything?
I think that sums it up.
Great, buddy. Has the facilities subcommittee met?
We have not met, but I just would note that Crystal Powers with the GSA had a conversation with her a couple of days ago. So they had one more hurdle to go through to provide officers with the property. Heard from her again today, and she was putting together a fact sheet for the officer in DC. She needed some more information, so she'll be forwarding that report to DC, and hopefully we'll hear something back in the future.
Great news. Anything else from facilities? All right, funding grants and subcommittee. I know Supervisor Reddick isn't here, but there is a piece of legislation that is floating out there, and Rod and I were just discussing that just enough to be dangerous. But Andy, do you want to follow up a little bit where that is?
Well, it's been introduced, and I'm not sure who's sponsoring it, but it does provide that, that courthouse or court functions can be considered an essential county purpose for certain bonding without a public referendum, and there's some thresholds based on size of county. So I think for larger counties, if it's 25% of the facility is used for court services, and for smaller counties, it's 50%. Is that right? And then-
Yeah, and then that was.
I thought it was the other way around.
Maybe.
Like I said, we know just enough, but there is some information that's just starting to kind of pop.
So
It's
for
gonna be
us-
the whole county.
Yeah, and then it's different amounts of bonding. So for our side, it would allow $28 million to be bonded without a public referendum. And I don't know what that means for a combined, for constructing a combined one, or what our options would be. I think Lonnie's also talked to some folks from Polk County who are kind of sponsoring it, and they were open to suggestions that would, that other counties would be interested in. So I think that's something worth exploring.
So we'll be watching that one real closely, but with Polk County really pushing this is also an issue that has been approved by the Iowa State Association of Counties in our statewide platform, if you will, for legislative issues. It was an issue that was added, and with the amount of legislators in power position from Polk County, they sometimes get their way. So we'll be watching that one very closely. Even if we have an opportunity to have the voters approve this on our level, this could provide additional funding to complete the project or to look at additional enhancements, particularly in the design of the facility as well. So things of that nature. And anything else from funding and grants? I know Supervisor Reddick is putting together final numbers in regards to the budget impact, because we're lowering it to 43.5, what that impact has. We'll make sure we'll have those accurate numbers out on the webpage very soon. Additional comments from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee members at this point? This will be an opportunity for the public to make comments. Anyone from the public? Thank you again for coming. Yes?
Yes, hi.
Go ahead, come on.
Oh, okay.
Just stand up and.
Sure. For those of you that may have been at the meeting last Tuesday who have heard my comments again, my name is Doyle Landry, Executive Director of Positive Vision, and my focus continues to be expungement. If you Google, we can do that these days, if you Google Dorothy Brown expungement, Cook County, for the last 6 years, the Honorable Dorothy Brown, Circuit Clerk of Court for Cook County, Illinois, has held a very successful expungement summit where individuals, for whatever reason, whatever crimes committed, which could be expunged by law, have been able to move forward with their lives with regard to employment, housing, and other areas that are basic rights. With regard to the issues that get bandied about here in Johnson County that were explained fervently last Tuesday on both sides, in my head I kept hearing, this could be expunged, this could be expunged, this could be expunged, in terms of hearing what people's concerns were, especially the large number of crimes that allegedly get committed by University of Iowa students while they are, young like we all were at one point. So I ask that some authentic conversation be centered around an expungement summit for Johnson County. It would be unique, it would be thinking out of the box, but just as like you are asking individuals to think about a justice center that, for some people who may have limited thinking, because you don't take people so far, limited thinking in terms of not understanding you have to spend money to be, or more specifically, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. The same thing with regard to thinking differently for younger people who may not understand the crime that you do today while minor and follow you down the road. So get authentic and honest, direct conversation about an expungement summit for Johnson County. I speak with assurance that that Honorable Dorothy Brown is very interested in traveling to this area to speak about the issue, because again, it works if you work it. And then finally, it ends the conversation about areas where people might not feel comfortable talking about, because at the end of the day, when you are able to move forward about employment and housing and other areas which should be basic rights, then you have the opportunity to focus your attention on areas of different concern.
And Joel, do we have your contact information? All the public folks, if you're interested, we'd be happy to get your emails and make sure that you're a part of all the dialogue and conversation, because I think that's something we can do.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My other question is just from training as a journalist, is there anything that, I know it can't be done from a public fund standpoint, but when I keep hearing public relations, if you look at what's going on in Lynn County in terms of money that's being spent, both yes and no with regard to the proposed casino in Lynn County, again, conversations about money, how people might be missing the issue. So I don't think when I say missing the issue, I mean just that, big picture, regardless of what area, what side you stand on. Is there a way, without using public funds, such as visiting area churches that have large congregations, where the time is taken by members of that who want the Justice Center built to visit, again, places like churches where they have large congregations, where people might feel comfortable asking some questions that they may not be willing to show up at a meeting where they're being taped. Because again, I bring that up to say, when you look at the closeness of the vote, you still have some individuals who are on the fence who, again, this is Iowa, where people feel like I need my question answered directly by you before I give a yes or a no. So rather than spending, I figure that the money isn't there for public relations. Some people have the flexibility of a public relations firm. So saying all of that to say, is there a way from your public relations, for those of you that are charged with public relations about it, that you can go about getting the vote from a wholesale standpoint?
Well, we can educate, we can't advocate. And because Sheriff Pokravic and County Attorney Linus aren't here, we can assign them to any place that you can think of.
Well,
And they would be happy to go.
and it should be noted that they did a lot of that prior to the last vote, particularly the sheriff and the county attorney, but also I think Jim did a lot of it. People on this committee did a lot of that. And we are, I know, speaking only for myself, but I'm sure probably for anybody in the room, we're happy to go any place that you can arrange. If you have ideas, let us know. We'd be happy to try to set it up.
Well, what might be obvious, all of the passion that was exhibited by students with regard to under 21, regardless how you feel about it, that's an active student population that I don't think has been engaged in this issue simply because they don't see the connection. When you have older individuals who are past their time of what they used to do in the bars here in Iowa City back in the day, that's just how I leave it. You have individuals who, again, it's an active student body who could be influenced if they understood how it directly affected them. So I'm sure that there are student organizations who would welcome the opportunity. Again, all that passion that you just wonder, where did it go? Because, again, at the end of the day, it was there, and they voted actively on this issue, that issue. Well, for this issue, you would think there would be shared passion, especially for the professional who came and listed all those statistics about university students who have primarily
all of our contact information is at the bottom of the agenda here.
Sure.
And we would love to hear from you. Any ideas that you have, we'll follow up on.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Anyone else from the public?
Could you repeat that website, please?
Well, I just said Google in terms of Dorothy Brown expungement, Cook County.
else from the public want to make comment? Seeing none, anything other from committee members? Andy, our next meeting is March 6th, 4:30 PM. That seems reasonable for everybody. We're back on track. We appreciate, again, you folks accommodating us. We were